We are honored to present our analysis of Phase 1, Scenario 2 of the Zurich Enterprise Challenge. Based on our analysis, RoboCanada should establish an assembly and distribution operation in Malaysia, Thailand, or China. These countries were chosen because they have the lowest risk according to the Risk Room tool and have shown consistently decreasing risk over the last 7 years. Compared to the UK and Canada, they have higher political and physical risks and slightly higher business environment risks. These countries would be great targets for RoboCanada in order to facilitate increased arbitrage and aggregation. Now Miguel will continue with our risk mitigation strategies.
First of all, we'll look at Malaysia. Malaysia's risk is better than most of the averages, with exception to human rights. That being said, we would like to mitigate this risk by partnering with a company or consulting with a human rights advocacy group. This would help RoboCanada conduct periodic human rights audits and keep the overseas manufacturer consistent. As for Thailand, there are few risks to mitigate. However, we decided to put a main focus on two. Firstly, corruption could be mitigated by communicating transparency as an essential company mission. By being transparent upfront, it would reduce the possibilities for bribery, as most of these arrangements are done under the table. The other risk would be information infrastructure. This would require the company to invest in different broadband companies in order to increase broadband capacity and availability of internet. We want this to happen because we want to keep the flow of information consistent as well. Abrar will go through China for mitigation risk.
Thank you, Miguel. China has come out with a lot of risk, and we've identified human rights, corruption, burden of customs, exchange rate fluctuation, and other natural disasters as the major risk. Applying some of the mitigation plans that Miguel has just talked about would help reduce risk in China as well. Some of the other plans that we recommend RoboCanada to implement would be to have their assembly planned according to the seismic codes and have raised floor levels, build flood tanks, etc. We also believe it is important for the company to hire local experts to spearhead the trade operations, paperwork, and compliances, which would greatly reduce the risk at China. Mitigating these key risks would result in lowering the cost and the impact from the risk, making them a good country to invest in. I will now pass it on to Navin to talk about some other opportunities that we looked into.
Thanks, Abrar. The Risk Room is a very useful risk analysis tool that we've used as our primary analysis device for the problem at hand for RoboCanada. That said, there are other factors that should be considered before a final decision should be made. Here are but a sample of concerns. The South China Sea is currently under political turmoil and is notorious for piracy. IP laws need to be in place to protect RoboCanada's assets. The world is a dynamic place, and each location's relationships with one another is of the utmost importance. Most locations will have different costs associated with different business practices. Some of the costs to consider are rentals or leases of facilities, manpower, shipping, and export-import duties. We've also put together a list of alternatives for RoboCanada's consideration, given the risks involved. RoboCanada could select countries outside the prescribed list to conduct the same analysis using the risk room, leverage existing relationships and expand in the countries they already have operations in, investigate the option of a mobile manufacturing facility that could go from location to location as needed, or lastly, continue with their current operations. To reiterate, using the Risk Room tool, we've selected Malaysia, Thailand, and China as the top 3 destinations from RoboCanada's consideration set of countries. We've also looked at other possible issues that would impact this decision that needs further due diligence. And lastly, we've placed other alternatives that could be avenues for success. Thank you for your time and consideration.